Thank you so much. My sound is fine, ¿verdad? Can you hear me? Okay, terrific. So, keynote speaker, my goodness. Well, I'm going to just tell you very briefly about Hispanic Federation. It was founded 30 years ago by mainly Puerto Rican organizations in New York to advocate for equitable funding for the nonprofit and community based organizations that serve our communities. And here we are 30 years later, continuing that work, not just in New York, but in Florida, Puerto Rico, and all across the country, including Washington, D.C., which is where I'm located, and do that work at the federal level, advocating with Congress on issues that impact our communities. And that includes not just Puerto Ricans on the island, but also Puerto Ricans displaced to the mainland by natural and economic disasters. Hispanic Federation is a non-disaster relief agency, yet we found ourselves running the largest private relief effort on the island, which we began by chartering the first relief flight following Maria, filled with first responders from New York 2 days after Maria made landfall. We've since opened an office on the island where we administer our programs and invest in building local capacity. And in keeping with our philosophy, we believe that the local nonprofit and community based organizations are in the best position to steer the recovery and rebuilding of Puerto Rico. For that reason, we've committed over $40 million to date to support over 120 local groups and initiatives across the island that are delivering ground up innovative projects, all built around long term recovery, resiliency, sustainability, increased self sufficiency, and community empowerment. So I encourage you to go to our website to learn more about our work in Puerto Rico. It's HispanicFederationPuertoRico.org. So I'm very proud of the work that we're doing there, but I'm here to talk about the perspective from Washington, D.C., which is where I work. It's hard to say that anything good came from Irma and Maria, but what is true is that as a result of the devastation following Maria and the fact that Puerto Ricans moved to all 50 states following Maria, there is much greater awareness about the state of life in Puerto Rico and much greater awareness about the inequities. I can say with confidence that people on the mainland who may only have thought of Puerto Rico as a nice place to take a vacation before Maria are now aware that U.S. citizens living in Puerto Rico are denied equal access to essential federal programs, that Puerto Rico's economy and the U.S. citizens who live in Puerto Rico face undue economic challenges because of unfair policies, and that Puerto Ricans, both on and off the island, understand the importance of paying attention to the role of Congress in determining the fate of what happens in Puerto Rico in a way that was not apparent at the level that it is now. And as Lillian mentioned, the major presidential candidates are talking about Puerto Rico, putting forth plans and courting the votes of Puerto Ricans at a level I don't think we have seen before. So these are good things. I think these are important things, and I think they have made a difference. That has come about as a result of a lot of education, organizing, partnerships with groups that care about adequate nutrition, housing, health, and created partnerships with the wide range of groups that are now including advocacy for parity in federal programs for Puerto Rico. No group has ever won their rights or their achieved their goals by themselves, and we think the same thing is needed for Puerto Rico. The people of this country are caring people. They were not aware before this, the fact that Puerto Rico has the highest levels of poverty, the highest levels of child poverty, people are shocked when they hear that. And because the people of this country are good, they've started to care about that. And they include this in Puerto Rico and the territories in their advocacy at a time when, for many years, that just really wasn't the case. The research from the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities that Javier does, the organizing of the diaspora that Federico is a part of through the Power for Puerto Rico Coalition, and Lillian's relentless, relentless advocacy in Congress about the nutrition needs of people in Puerto Rico have made a huge difference. right now there are bipartisan bills. We're a nonpartisan organization. We're not a bipartisan organization, but there are bipartisan bills in both the House and the Senate that have been written in the last 2 years, about 27 of them. Most of them that we support, not all of them, but addressing everything from equitable nutrition assistance, Medicaid and CHIP assistance, the debt relief, the Territories Health Equity Act, child tax credit, all of these, there are bills, there is legislation in both houses, the House and the Senate, that address all of these issues that we have talked about. The fact of the matter is that in the Senate, it has been much harder to get support for these bills. Many of them have passed the House. So if there is a change in composition of the Senate, if there is a change in the administration, I think that we have a very good chance of moving many of these things. The work that people are doing to pursue this in the courts is critical. It's critical. As people have noted, these issues may end up in front of the Supreme Court. So that is also something very much alive right now in the country, is what kind of a court are we going to have? And whether that court will side with positions of the administration, which is fighting these benefits, which is fighting these court cases. They continue to fight them. I think we need a change, obviously, politically, but the change that we have already seen in caring about Puerto Rico, in the expansion, it is not just Puerto Ricans that care about what happens to the people of Puerto Rico, fills me with great optimism. So we will continue to press that case from here to make sure every time a group is advocating on behalf of renters in the states, we say, and also in the territories, and so that they say, oh yes, of course, we didn't mean to leave them out. This is very heartening. I think the elections are going to probably be the biggest indicator of how far we can move forward with achieving parity in federal programs, as well as achieving parity on other issues, dealing with the debt. Another thing that, is also indirectly related to the lack of federal parity. The fact that Puerto Rico has to borrow so much money because it does not receive federal funds at the same rate as other states is very much connected to the debt issue. So there is a huge ripple effect that this lack of parity, and as the federal judge said, this discrimination against the people of Puerto Rico has across the island, across the quality of life of Puerto Ricans on the island, and including the people who, again, have been, unwilling, would not, people for the most part do not choose to leave their homes, if they have a choice. And so, there are people here who would love to go back to the island if they could get the same benefits, if they could find good jobs, if their children could go to schools that are in their local communities where they feel they will receive a good education. And we need to do everything possible to make sure that Puerto Ricans have that same choice that other Americans have to make for their families and for their futures. So I'm very optimistic that we will see a change with this election in a way that will help Puerto Rico move forward. And Hispanic Federation will continue to do the work that we can along with our partners and all of you to make sure that happens.